Good evening everybody and welcome to the Azim Premji University Public Lecture Series. Today's lecture is by Mr. R. Jagannathan, the Editorial Director of Swarajya. As you all know, and I say every time I introduce the speaker for the day, this is something that's very important to the organization, and we've been holding the Public Lecture Series for many years now, broken and interrupted by the pandemic but resumed a few months ago. And since then we've had Sanjay Varu and Makaran Paranspe, and today it's our pleasure to have Mr. R. Jagannathan. Mr. Jagannathan, as you know, is the editorial director of Swarajya and has had a career of more than 46 years as a financial and political journalist, and is one of India's leading contributors. I know that among all people who come here, there are eminent people, there are people who are public intellectuals, there are people who are very, very persuasive in their writing and speaking, and I guess we have Jagannathan here who rolls many of these together into one. The topic he's chosen today is also particularly interesting, and when I shared information about Mr. Jagannathan's lecture today, I think the people who responded, some may not be here yet, was instinctively saying, aha, this seems to be interesting. And I guess for us at the Azim Premji Foundation, topics of these kinds with a variety of speakers presenting their views, and then the most important question and answer dialogue with the audience, is something that adds enormous value. I cannot resist a personal piece in this introduction, which is that Mr. Jagannathan, when he started his career, it was during the height of the emergency. But going back even 10 years earlier, I remember as a young boy in the 60s, the Swarajya was a fixture in our house, because my father was an avid follower of Rajaji, the Swatantra Party, and the Swarajya magazine. So when I was probably 7 or 8, I guess I started reading a few copies of the Swarajya. Of course, by I think 71 or 72, Rajaji died in 72, and I guess the party faded and the magazine also faded. But it was tremendously important and interesting that Swarajya reactivated and has come out in its new avatar under the leadership of Mr. Jagannathan. It's always a pleasure to read you, Mr. Jagannathan, and I can say that we all look forward to hearing you. It's going to be equally delightful. On behalf of Azim Premji University, once again a warm welcome.
I thank the organizers for calling me today to deliver this talk. I chose this topic not only because it may look provocative to many of you, but because I think this is not something that I suddenly discovered. It's something I have been in the process of discovering over the last 10 years. Because I considered myself a liberal, a classic liberal, maybe 10-15 years ago. But over a period of time, when I found that people who call themselves liberals were nothing like what I thought they would be, then I found that there is something structurally problematic about the term liberalism itself. Two caveats before I start the main part of my thing. I am not a public speaker, I am more a writer, which is why I partly am using a slightly visual medium, which includes some key points. But it is not a PowerPoint presentation. I am not here to sell anything. I have nothing to sell. I have only questions. So all the slides essentially talk about the questions we need to ask ourselves, and those of us who think of ourselves as liberals or conservatives or whatever. It's a question everybody must ask, but I am focusing on liberals because that's where a lot of the angst is coming in multiple sides. So these 2 points having been said, let me say this is my conclusion. Actually, the organizers had put a question mark at the end, and I think that would have been right. I said no, this is my conclusion, and as a journalist I must give my conclusion first and then come back to the reasoning behind why I have come to this conclusion or coming to this conclusion. This does not mean that we shouldn't be liberals. I myself am a liberal in many areas. I am not a liberal in all areas. That's all there is to it. So, if I might just start the process. This is what. Okay. The main thing we have to know is it's all right if you are a liberal and if you are a liberal individual. Liberal is an adjective and it can be a noun. When you say adjective means I am a liberal person. On this issue I have liberal views. I am a liberal parent, or I am a liberal friend, or on the LGBTQ issue I am a liberal, but on some other issue I am not a liberal. On fiscal policy I am not a liberal. So my point is It is all right to be a liberal when you use the word like an adjective. I am a liberal something. I am liberal on this issue. The minute you say I am a liberal, suddenly you are part of a group that is ideologically claims some kind of coherence, which means that you are wedded to an ideology no matter what the issue. So you have a problem. So I think if you are using the term as an adjective, I have no issue because it is specific to an issue or to an individual or to a situation. But if you say I am a liberal, then you have a problem because you have to be something no matter what, because you have stuck that label on your back and you can't get out of it. No matter what you do, you are in that group. And that is how polarization happens. And my thing is that we should not have polarization regardless of whether you are a liberal or a conservative, a moderate or a radical, whatever you are. You can be everything, but you are not going to be the same on every issue, on everything. So which is why I say be clear whether you are a liberal and you're using the term as an adjective or a noun. A liberal with an L capital is a problematic. A liberal something is not problematic. You can be anything you want to be. So that's one part. Let's first go to who is a liberal. Okay, there are many ways of looking at what is a liberal. There are now, in fact, liberalism is the oldest ideology that came up in the post-Christian world, where people got fed up with religious orthodoxy and dogma, and they started thinking that there has to be a better way of organizing civilized society, and it came with the Enlightenment, and all the Enlightenment thinkers were considered to be liberals, and they thought, so what is liberal? That is the classic liberal. The theme song for the classic liberal was the word freedom, which is freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, all those things came together, and of course free markets. That is the classic liberal. But classic liberalism didn't really succeed, and which is why you had far more. Then liberalism thought they need to reinvent themselves, so he thought of progressive liberalism, okay, where your concern for the underdog becomes far more important than just a position on free thought, free speech, or whatever it is. So that's where it happened. Then of course you move when the fact that liberalism has repeatedly failed despite having a 500-year history is why you had two other ideologies developing towards the second half of the 19th century. What were those two ideologies? One is called fascism, because he said this doesn't work, so we need to organize things in a different way. And that's how fascism came in the first part of the 19th century. It had a very short shelf life. Why? Because its defects were obvious right from the beginning. It was oriented towards authoritarianism, and it could never win against total freedom, which was what liberals promised. Then you had communism, the second major ideology, again based on the principle of authoritarianism. Fascism lasted about 3 decades, even though there are still stragglers of fascists still roaming around in parts of Europe, and they're coming back. But the very fact that a fascist can still have so much vote share, and very fact that you can have a Donald Trump being elected, a terrible guy like that getting elected as a president should tell you what is the problem. Problem is your liberal ideology that is failing. If it had actually succeeded, why would they come to power? That's the question you need to ask yourself. And why would Britain want to go out of the European Union when they were doing well? I mean, the liberals wanted to stay in. It is the right wing, the conservatives wanted to go out, and the working class wanted out. Why did working class want out? My point is, if liberalism has actually worked, none of this would have happened. So the failure of liberals should really be hung around their necks, because they have not lived up to whatever their ideals were. But of course, I have a different point of view. I have a point of view which says that the idea itself is flawed fundamentally for a different reason, which I will come to in a short while. If you see purely from our point of view, none of these issues, all these issues relate to liberalism, but all are liberals on the wrong side of liberalism here. You talk about uniform civil code, which ought to be a liberal issue, because they talk about universal values, but they don't want UCC. They say, no, yes, but. They have a yes, but view on certain things. Take about violence. You have only, if one kind of violence is there, I'll protest. Another kind of violence is there, I will not protest. So if you are going to take a very limited view on that, Or think about temples. You talk about freedom of conscience, and 100,000 temples in southern India are under state control and nobody has a view on that. They don't care. So where are you as a liberal? You are not a liberal if you don't care on it. CAA, you made it about Indian citizens when it was about citizens who are oppressed outside the country, right? You can say, okay, maybe you could have added 10 more countries, that's different. But you are talking about fast tracking a citizenship to somebody who is oppressed. In Bangladesh, the Hindu population has fallen from 22% to 8%, and you think there is no oppression. You need to do nothing. You are a liberal. You don't care about that. You only care about something else. No, you're not. So, mostly, selective outrage and limited kind of liberalism is not liberalism. It is illiberal. So, you need to be clear about which side you are on when you're talking, whether you are a liberal or not a liberal. Now here I'll make, in the next 2-3 slides, I'll make a brief digression where I am going into the fundamentals of liberalism, why I think there is a problem with the idea of liberalism itself. Not about individual being a liberal in a particular sense, or the ideology. All ideology fails. See, liberalism developed in a Eurocentric context, where I think up to the 15th, 16th century you had the church playing a very strong role. Then there are 3 or 4 kinds of pushbacks. One was within the religious space itself. You had Protestantism, which said that look, this Catholic Church has become corrupt, overpowerful, we need to go back to true religion. Others were moving beyond the religious space, and they were saying that look, why do we need to stick with dogma and religious belief? We can actually think of a post-religious world, secularized aspect. And they said that, okay, the human spirit is being held back by things like religion, tribe, this, that, and so to free the spirit, you need to focus on individual human rights. And all the traditional institutions of the past are actually constraints on human freedom. Individual freedom, individual rights is the focus. That is the basis for the liberal ideology, right? Now, Eastern thought process is far more secular. Liberal thought process is more linear. That is, you move from paganism to organized religion, then you move to a secularist aspect of religion where you don't need the religious fundamentals, but you still think that universalism lies in a certain direction. Okay, so whereas Eastern religions are far more cyclical in thinking. They don't believe that there is only a linear path from backwardness to modernity or anything. There may be slippages, you will keep moving, you slip back, you move ahead. That's what the Eastern thing. So that's one part of, I'll come back to why I think liberalism is a logical extension of whatever was the Eurocentric experience of linear growth. The second thing, there are far more binaries in the liberal system. That is, if I am a liberal, you are a liberal. If I am a believer in this God, you are a worshipper of devil. If you are, so there is a very, very clear sense of us and them in the liberal thought process, which comes from the European, Eurocentric civilizational experience. So this basically, instead of giving you, for example, in the dharmic system, what you have is the opposite of white is not black, the opposite of good is not evil, the opposite of good is not good, which can be multiple things. Your choices, like in a political space, are you really choosing between good party and a bad party? No, you are choosing between multiple parties, some who may be better, some may be worse, but you are trying to choose a lesser evils, right? So the opposite of a good party may not be a bad party, but less good parties whom you may want to vote for or whatever, or opposite of a bad party is not necessarily a good party, because you are going to do that. So you need to look at, culturally, you need to look at multinary options, not binary. And once you go to a binary, the logical thing, my way or the highway, is the way you will think. And that is the problem with liberalism. Because if you are not liberal, then you must be some fuddy-duddy, conservative, bigot, all those things, right? So that's the way you tend to think if you are looking at that kind of thought process. Okay, so this is where you come to, why do we accept the tyranny of binaries? Why is it that the opposite of liberal is illiberal? Why is it that the opposite of a liberal cannot be something else? It could be anything. And remember, in my very first slide, I said, you are not liberal in all senses of the term. You can be liberal in a particular instance. You don't have to be liberal in all things. I mean, I'll give you a simple example. I mean, some of you might feel this a little offending, but it doesn't matter. Let's say a liberal view is that consensual relationships between adults is fine, right? And I accept that. Then the next stage where you test the liberality a little more, you say, okay, consensual relationship between couples of the same sex is also fine. That's also a liberal position. Now you come to a third position where there may be outrage. Okay, if you say consensual relationship, suppose it is within the family, what happens? Everybody will outrage. I am not a liberal. I don't think that is a liberal position. Right? So what I am saying is, as you increase the level of question on what you want to be a liberal on, you will suddenly find that I am not a liberal here. Here I want to draw the line. Somebody will draw the line here. Somebody will draw the line there. So you are going to have different kinds of people making different kinds of statements about liberalism. And you need to understand what is being said and say, on this position, this is what mine. So that is my point. So liberal is not a binary. You can be a liberal in some areas, you can be illiberal in some areas, or not illiberal. You can be conservative, you can be so many things, right? Now let's go back to the original idea of things. You talk about liberty, equality, fraternity, right? Now, each of these contradicts the other two. If you have more liberty, you will have less of equality and less of fraternity. Because liberty, if you say free market, free speech, you're going to upset brotherhood if you're going to say something in your free speech because you want liberty, right? So you're going to offend somebody who's going to destroy your fraternity. Or if you're going to have freedom of religion, let's say, a lot of conversions happening, are you going to have fraternity? No way. You're going to have more discord in society. You're not going to. These three are three parts of a triangle. They can either all go little by little incrementally, or if you try to say, I am going to focus on equality, like say the communist state, then automatically the other parts disappear. I mean, the liberty part disappeared and the equality part, the brotherhood part came down, except that you are all a part of a fraternity of the poor. That's what happened. But the minute you say liberty, then you say you have free market, this thing, then only there will be inequality will grow. So no matter what you do, all three will not grow together unless you do it very, very slowly and incrementally. You are going to have an issue where it's going to work in a different way. Then we go to specifics, like what is equality? We are looking at equality of opportunity or outcomes. Unfortunately, this goes against the basic evolutionary logic of human beings. There is no equality in nature. We can't rant about nature because even if you take twins, both with the same kind of intellect thing, put them in an equal situation, you will find at the end of 10 years, the outcomes are solidly different. And over a period of time, as they go through generations, natural selection will tilt progress in one direction. There will be inequality, whether you like it or not. What you need to do is figure out what we can do to reduce that. But there cannot be total this thing, because inequality of outcomes is predetermined in the concept of nature itself. Nature does not create equality. In no species does it create equality, and you expect that we want human species to fit into a concept of equality that doesn't exist in nature. So we are actually quarreling with nature. What we have to do is, what can we do to remedy the level of inequality, whatever it is? It has to reduce. That is what we need to focus on. So the focus should be on, can we reduce inequality, not about whether we can ensure equality. Same thing, same problem here with liberty. Okay, what is liberty? We talk about free speech, freedom, but who is going to guarantee this? Let's take the issue of free speech. Okay, free speech can only be guaranteed by the state, because what is the fundamental liberal position? Liberal position is that individual rights are very important. Who will guarantee individual rights? You say that you've got free speech, free freedom of religion, all those things, right? You say individual is important. Liberalism has posited itself totally against all traditional institutions. You are against family because family is oppressive. You are against tribe because tribal is oppressive. You are against caste because it's oppressive. You are against other forms of communities because they tend to have rules which limit the freedom of the individual. So you have actually put yourself against all forms of community. And then so if liberalism is essentially about destroying all earlier forms of community, then it's going to destroy itself, because it goes against the fundamentals of nature and human nature. Because human beings will form groups. You will form jatis, whether you like it or not. You may not form varnas, but you may form jatis, you will definitely form. Because you will, today you will have that kind of thing. You will form those things. That is what will happen. Let's look at freedom of religion. We talk about it as though it's some kind of end goal in itself, quite apart from the fact. In the USA in 2010, there was a case of freedom of speech. Okay, there was this case involving Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission. Apparently, a huge corporation had funded some anti-Hillary Clinton ads, and according to a bipartisan law, you can't air those kind of commercials so close to an election. This case went up to the Supreme Court, and what did the Supreme Court decide? In a 5-4 verdict, 5 conservative judges decided that the corporation's free right, that is the election funded corporations, their right to free speech is the same as the right to free speech of individuals. Okay, so if you apply, but all the Democrats were livid. They said, look, how is this nonsense happening? An individual who is merely speaking about his own ideas cannot really fight against a multi-million-dollar corporation who is free to do. Can I say that my free speech rights are going to be given the same space if I get a billionaire is going to fund against my views? I mean, this is how, say, Big Pharma wins in the US. They have the lobbying power to do all that, and they do that. So the same, when you apply that to religion, freedom of religion has to be about the individual. It cannot be about hugely funded institutions that are going to be into conversion strategies. That will create problems. Freedom is about the individual. Look at Gandhi. I mean, did he have any problem with accepting the Sermon on the Mount? No, he said that part of Christianity appeals to me, I am going to adopt it. Freedom was about the individual. It was not. He was dead against conversion. Why? Because he said the same thing, that Citizens United versus FEC, that individual rights cannot be pitted against corporate rights, and institutional conversion strategies are essentially you are pitting the individual against the corporation. So freedom of religion needs to be limited to an individual right. It is not a corporate right where heavily funded organizations can do mass conversions. That is a huge problem. And not only that, in our own case, in Reverend Stanislaus versus State of Madhya Pradesh, I think it was in the 60s, the court clearly said, your right to propagate is there, but right to propagate is not equal to right to convert. Now, many liberals say, what do you mean by that? What is the point in propagation if you cannot convert, right? So, my reverse argument is this. If that is so, tell me, I have got 100,000 temples under state control, okay? Please propagate, please convert. Let the state of Tamil Nadu, which has 46,000 temples under them, please convert people to Hinduism and tell me that you are propagating religion. You are not. You are not allowing them to practice. You are not propagating. So if propagation equal to right to convert, then 100,000 temples should be doing a huge lot of reverse conversion. So my right to propagation is gone because you have nationalized all the temples and you are doing whatever you want with them, right? So it does not belong to you. I mean, it belongs to the devotee. So it is not your private, it is not public sector. But you made it into a public sector. How is it the right? You tell me. So freedom of religion, actually the argument cuts both ways. My own view is that it belongs to the individual, not heavily funded organization. The other problem with liberalism is this: when you pit rights without a concomitant balance of duties, you are going to get chaos. Because rights, everybody can demand, but rights without a corresponding obligation of duties is not going to work. It is going to create anarchy, because everybody is going to demand rights. Nobody has duties, right? How many of you even know that Article 51A says there is a list of fundamental duties? Do you do anything like that? No, you have things like respect the anthem, flag and all. But today it's a liberal point. No, if he doesn't want to sing the national song, that is his freedom of right. Now that is part of your fundamental duties. You want to demand fundamental rights, but you do not want to follow fundamental duties. Okay. So similarly, here we say I have fundamental right to a clean, garbage-free Bangalore, no potholes, right? Now, how is this right ever going to be enforced if the people working in the BBMP do not think of themselves as mere people with the employees all have rights, right? No duties. You have rights. I don't know. I have a right to higher pay because inflation is going up. I have so many things. I don't have a duty to make sure that my job gets done, whatever is done. So this is the problem with liberalism fundamentally, that when you insist that rights is the way to go and there is no corresponding sense of duty, you are going to get chaos. Liberalism fights against the fundamental laws of human nature because you are trying to force fit an ideology and inflict it on a people because it's theoretically the right thing to do. You think that's a great way to organize society. But you are not going to say that everybody. The reason why earlier societies had a degree of stability was because if you are in a tribe, you could do many things, but the tribe's interests predominated. So which means there is a balance between rights and duties. Now if you don't do that, you are going to end up with what you have. You are going to have polarization. Well, there will be one lot saying rights, another lot saying my rights, and there are only people demanding rights. And what will you get in the end result? So you are going against the fundamentals of societal balance when you say rights and not duties. So you got to move there, and that's where liberalism is going to fail, because the minute you say only rights, and that too individual rights. And what is the first lesson you learn in sociology? That man is a social animal. And where is the social in liberalism? Nothing. There is no social. Today people talk about, Raghavan wrote a book saying the third pillar, right? He said the state is strong, markets are strong, there is no third pillar, there is no community. The whole purpose of community was destroyed by liberalism, where say the individual is there, it exists. And it is the community that is oppressive. All forms of traditional communities are oppressive. So what do? So that's your problem. So you need to get into some kind of balance on this. So when you emphasize rights, the logical outcome is an ever-growing and ever-powerful state. Because there are no middle levels of check on freedoms which are balanced by duties. Because all your other middlemen level is like an organization which has the CEO and workers only, right? So the workers have rights, so the CEO will have absolute authoritarian power, otherwise he can't ensure their rights. So the state is becoming more and more and more powerful because your entire liberalism argument is based on individual rights and rights alone. So that's where it is going to fail. Because have you seen any state, democratic or otherwise, that has not increased its power over the last 30 years? It has not happened that. Even what is the USA? After 9/11, US government has extensive surveillance of every one of its citizens. The CIA, which was earlier only a spy thing, has become an assassination arm of the government. Okay, you find, okay, that is Osama's uncle-in-law, so I have to bomb him out of existence. Yeah, okay, Angela Merkel, I need to know what she has. So you're snooping on Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of West Germany. Okay, every social media arm, every town square, everything has cameras, facial recognition. So the state has become more powerful because you are supposed to guarantee rights, and the state will demand more power. So you want more rights, so then who is going to guarantee? There is no family there to restrict your rights and tell you be balanced. There is no tribe to tell you that. There is no caste to tell you that don't exceed your limits. There is no Khap Panchayat to tell you that. There is nobody there to tell you that, okay, this has to be balanced with this in the interest of larger society. So the state will become all powerful. So the original liberal proposition of a minimal state with maximal personal liberty and individual right is actually having the exact opposite result. You're going to have massive states. You forget Putin or Xi Jinping and all, those are authoritarian states by nature. But every Western state today is the envy of Putin and Xi Jinping, let me say. Because if Xi Jinping does anything wrong, he will face the problems. There will be an internal coup or something that will happen at some point. But if Joe Biden does something wrong, you won't know, because he's still talking freedom and taking away your freedoms. Because he's talking about freedom and everybody gets sold on it. But you are actually not achieving any freedom. You are actually giving up. The reason why a Trump ever comes to power, a rotten character like Trump comes to power, is because the disempowered lots, the so-called deplorables in society, are reacting to the fact that they feel disempowered. So they are saying that, look, this is the only guy who is saying that there is a problem with the elites and I want to do something about it. So I will vote for him. Why did people vote for Brexit? Same reason. The elites were not seem to be reflecting the will of the people. So there is no sense of community. I am left out and you don't care. You are saying you are making money in the city of London. Financial guys are making money. And look at what happened in 2008. The minute the system collapsed in the global financial crisis, who was bailed out? All the bankers, all the same rogues who created those financial products were bailed out because the system had to be saved. Otherwise, there would be systemic collapse and chaos and anarchy. So the same guys who created the problem are the guys laughing all the way. And you had the biggest stock market boom after 2008, all the way coming up to now. Okay, it's only the guys who landed people in the ditch. And these are all done by liberal governments. Forget about Republicans and all. After that you had Obama. And after that you, of course, had Trump. But each of them is busy signing fiscal deficit of enormous proportions. And that's what they are doing. And what is the liberal theory now? It's called modern monetary theory. There are just 2 years, it had 2 years of life expectancy. They said that if, as long as there is no inflation, if you keep on printing money and giving it to the poor, there is no problem. And what did you end up with? You have inflation levels in the US that are higher than ours, an unheard of phenomenon in the last 30 years. And here we have a little more conservative government which did not do those stupid things. And here our inflation is much better. Throughout Europe, they have inflation levels unheard of since the last 30-40 years. And this is direct proportion, the result of liberalism, because liberal means that you keep throwing money at people. This is what it is. You need to be conservative in your fiscal policy and how you help the poor, how you target the poor. You don't want to do that. That's what you have to do. So when the state is the guarantor, you end up with a bigger state, and the bigger state, the less your freedoms. So liberalism, by focusing on individual rights and rights alone, is actually asking for a bigger state, and ultimately that bigger state will reduce liberalism to a naught, and that is exactly what is happening. Second thing, here is where I come back to my thing. Like today, you want to think of the state as only the government that you elected. You go and vote, and that's the state. But that's not the state. Today, every group is a state. Is big tech not a state? I mean, who would have thought? See, the electoral process could not dethrone Trump, but Facebook and Twitter could. On January 6th, when the Capitol riots happened, they could just throw him out, right? So who is the state here? I mean, there is no state here. He is somebody or somewhere in our own thing. Like you can tell that remove this post, remove that post, and this thing. Soon the Twitter boss itself got removed, and then you have Elon Musk saying don't. He is saying the same thing. Don't remove the posts that relate to me. So this is what is happening. So you have got a situation where we are talking about a state within a state within a state. And these fellows are all in league together. Why is big tech in league with the liberals? Reason is, if liberals actually wanted to break them up, which is how you get competition, which is the original policy where you allow free markets and free competition and greater competition, and the consumer will benefit. But big tech is totally aligned with liberals because they don't want to be broken up, because their hegemony they want to retain. So they will do exactly that. So that is why they deplatformed Trump, because it's not till Trump was getting huge traffic, they had no problems, they were making money from it. Then when they realized that he might lose the election, India already lost at that point, they decided that they were going to do this. So we need to understand, in the modern world, there is no such thing as state separate from non-state actors. A lot of non-state actors have the same control over you. Today, Google can hack your brain, okay, which a state cannot do, because basically he knows what you buy, where you go, what you wear, and things like that. He knows you, right? Whenever you send a mail and somebody sends you a mail, it immediately gives you 3 options on what you should reply, right? So he has read your letter. So if you say that that is not a state, because state, this is, anybody who read Animal Farm in 1984 of George Orwell will know that this is exactly what is happening with both state and non-state states like big tech, So we are actually confusing the word state, because state is anybody who is capable of enforcing something in a limited closed user group or this thing like that. What Google has done is reduce citizens to consumers. There is no citizenship anymore. There is only consumerism. So he says, as long as I give you something free, you must shut up and take and do what I tell you to do. This is what has happened. So there is now a bigger state at work, and politicians don't know what to do about it, because these fellows can go and dethrone the politician. right? Because they can use their platforms for or against one politician or the other. And there is a state within a state within a state. And there are non-state. I mean, today if 20 guys can bring down the Twin Towers, you know that the power of non-state actors is very high. And non-state actors backed by specific states can be very powerful. So the meaning of state actually is quite changed. And this is a challenge both to the liberal ideal and this thing, because this is another thing I have a problem with, because I think liberal, when they conflated themselves with left liberal, they actually lost focus. The left originally started with an undemocratic attitude, then it became a little more democratic because they said we'll come through the electoral process and things like that. But the minute you conflate the two, what is the meaning of left or liberal? I mean, it doesn't mean the same thing. You are saying that. Or I'll give you an example from contemporary this thing. The Economist, if anybody reads that, they define themselves as the politics of the extreme center. Okay, what they mean is they are liberal in social policy, more leftish there, and they are conservative in economic policy, more right. So they are saying they believe in the extreme center. Now tell me one thing, if you just reverse it, I get the RSS. What is it? It is conservative in social and cultural policy, so which is right wing in culturally, but in economic policy it is left wing. What does it back? It runs the biggest country's biggest trade union. It is against GM crops. It has problems with globalization. These are all left wing agendas. So they can say I am also belong to the extreme center, because this is what is Modi doing? He is doing the same thing. 80 crore people have got free food for the last 2.5 years, right? So, and people get money into their accounts. So how is he not left of center in terms of policy, right? You may say culturally maybe he wants Ram Mandir, so that's different. But the fact is he is also extreme center. They are all mixed up. So my point is left liberal, right center, these are all meaningless terms. What you mean by saying is that on a specific issue, where do you stand is what is most important. So don't look at the labels too much. Now this is the ultimate thing. What happens to any ideology is when it doesn't work, they try and say version 2.0. Just like Microsoft will keep going Windows 11, 12, will keep on sending you updates every 2 days, which then gets your computer stuck up for 15 minutes. So they will keep sending you. So update of liberal 1.0 was progressive liberalism. After that you had logical extremes like fascism and communism, which failed. Now, so you have critical race theory. Now, there is nothing wrong with the analysis of critical race theory. Okay, what is critical race theory? It says that the current structures do not allow the oppressed to actually obtain equal outcomes, because the structures themselves are flawed, and so we have to destroy the structure. That is the fundamental of a critical race theory. I am okay with the analysis part, which is that the structure is not helping you, and you need to do. But they do not have an alternative vision. Even fascism had an alternative vision. Even communism had an alternative vision. The problem with having an idea that says that this is thing, so I must destroy it and I don't have an alternative vision, is problematic, because you can't test. See, what is science about having a proposition that is falsifiable? We knew with fascism that they had a proposition and it was falsifiable and people discovered it. Communism, same problem. 1989, Berlin Wall fell, and before you knew that proposition was not going to work. But critical race is a non-falsifiable proposition, because the analysis is correct. Meaning, you know that there is a problem with society, structural problem with society, which creates certain outcomes regardless of what you do. Look at India. We have actually implemented critical race theory for the last 70 years. What have we done? We are the only country in the world which has an open-ended, multi-generational affirmative action system that will never end, and it will be ever expanded. You just had an EVS quota, AWS quota being sanctioned by the Supreme Court, right? The Supreme Court said 49% is the limit. Now they said, no, but I'll put an asterisk and say something else will work, right? Soon, 3 state governments already said, I'm going to raise the quotas to 75, okay? So ultimately, quotas are going to be self-defeating, but that's where we are headed. So we are actually bought the idea of critical race theory and said, we are going to do something about it. We will make sure that a structure that is against you will be worked towards you. We are already there. What is the SC/ST Atrocities Act? It is about saying that if I accuse you of casteism, you have to go to jail. You have to be arrested, regardless of whether I did anything or not. So you actually condemned a person before inquiry, you have to go to jail. So we have actually implemented what critical caste theories have asked for, that the fundamental structures are wrong, so I am going to do my own sense of what is right and wrong, and that need not have any relationship with rational thought process or whether it's actually going to help the SCST or not, right? Now, this is what has happened. So, critical race theory is headed in the same direction, towards nothingness, and which is going to fail. What we have done is, all societies ultimately break into hierarchies, and they also break into social groups, which are called jatis. Okay. Now, you will have a Varna system whether you like it or not. In Varna, what happens is somebody merely has to describe something, and soon description at one generation becomes prescription for another generation. Okay. Somebody merely said that the Brahmin came from the mouth and Krashtiya from the limbs and this thing and all in the Purusha Sukta, that is in the 10th later Rigveda, right? And you took that as the basis of the caste system and hierarchical, and then in the later Dharma Shastras you made all those changes and said, oh, this is real, right? What was the description of society suddenly became a prescription at a later date. Same thing happened with caste. Caste is, is a Portuguese term, right? There are jatis. None of the fellows thought they were in this varna or that. But the British came and said, no, there is this 4 varnas, scriptures say there are these 4 varnas, you have to be force-fitted here, there, and this. So what really happens? Classification has led to ossification. Description has become prescription. Classification, ossification. This is the reality of human things. And what is going to happen is this. We have created a new caste system in the name of woke liberalism. What have you done? Your high priests there, the super Brahmins, they are the Ivy League professors who are pouting critical caste theory, critical race theory and all those theories. They are the ones telling you how you should think. If you don't think, you are wrong. You must have the right way of thinking or don't think. Let us do the thinking. You would listen to what I say. I am the Brahmin. I will chant the mantras. You better just recite them or call me, pay me fees for that. Right? That's what it is. And what is this? You have broken something into LGBTQ. Are these discrete categories? No, they are not. You have just lumped a whole lot of people together into one. And you have actually created, of course, this attribution is in the next slide, not this one. The point is, you have created subcategories where you are restricted to one identity and not multiple. Now, Amartya Sen said we all have multiple identities, right? We are not one person. But with this, you have created a new jati system, a new caste system, just that there are different high priests and there are different jatis. That is what you have done. Here, this is what is from Rajiv Malhotra's book. This is an LGBT person from India who went to the US and found a community that was supportive of her LGBT status, right? Now, but this is what he said. Upon moving to California, I came out publicly as a member of a well-established LGBTQ community, especially with a subgroup of Asian origin members. This filled a void because we had comfort and safety as a family sharing common concerns, predicaments. But as I got deeper into the American LGBTQ movement, I noticed that this new group of friends had antagonistic views about Hinduism in India. So they said, this is a rotten thing, don't ever be associated with Hindus or India or something like that. So suddenly, she has to now say that only LGBTQ is my identity, not Hindu, not India, nothing, right? This was the reality she faced. And this is the reality all persons will think. On the contrary, just look at the basic idea that we have, that we basically have fluidity in gender. We have the concept called Ardhanarishwara, right? In sculpture, it is represented as somebody who's half his body male and female. But what really happens is, through processes, this is the reality of all of us, whether you think of yourself as a man or a woman or something in between or whatever. The issue is, two things determine your gender inclinations identity. One is genetics, where your chromosome decides what the gender of the child will be. And after birth and even during this thing, social situation tells you that if you are born with what looks like a baby girl, we will treat you in a certain way and you will have certain expectations built into you. And the same thing. These two processes make you what you are, give you your gender identity no matter what. But our gender identity is fluid in the sense that I may be a man but I have feminine inclinations in many ways. That does not mean I am suddenly LGBTQ. Similarly, I have a primary identity, I have another sense of who I am, right? In my own gender identity. Nobody is pure L or pure G or pure B and things like that. They have other things also. And we want to deny this by saying that you are a very, very specific slot in the LGBT. This is rubbish because you are actually slotting people, whereas the Ardhanarishwara concept is more fluid. He says, we are all androgynous by nature. We have some elements of masculinity and femininity. It may vary from individual to individual. It does not mean each one is a separate slot or a category. This is where liberalism is taking you to super slotting, which will actually destroy the whole basis of society. So nobody wants multiple identities. They want actually narrow identities. This is either you are liberal or not a liberal. Either you are LGBTQ or you are something else. So I am saying we are moving in the wrong direction. Liberalism. So my point is, everybody on the range from say liberal to conservative, we are all there somewhere on the spectrum, depending on the issue. You don't have to be any one particular kind or the other. You have to think for yourself in each situation on each issue. That's the only way to live life. So, this got a little faded. So these are my only conclusions. The others are all questions, and if I am successful in raising those questions as important things to consider, I am happy. If you agree with me, I am fully happy. If you don't agree with me, I am okay. This point is to have a conversation on this. I think liberalization is lighting its own funeral pyre because it focuses too much on rights, not obligations, not responsibilities. So a liberal is one who behaves like a liberal. It is dying because people are using it as a badge or a label, not as an approach to life and issue. So you should, if you want to be liberal, be liberal. Nobody is stopping you. Don't stick that label on your back and say, now I belong to this side of the spectrum, not that side. This is rubbish. It is dying for it has become an antithesis. It is driven by hubris and I am right, you are wrong assumption. This is the binary problem with liberalism. You cannot do that. No one can be a liberal or a conservative at all the time. Where the two differ is in the speed of change. And if you read Jaitirth Rao's book on the Indian conservative, he says this is the same thing, that somebody may want change to be a little slower, somebody may not want to throw the baby with the bath water. So you change at your own pace. And a liberal means allowing people to change at their own pace. Right? You may want to change faster. Who is stopping you? You don't think that everybody has to follow you in your pace. And you stop being a liberal the minute you think that anybody who disagrees with you is beyond the pale, needs to be cancelled. Okay? You are not a liberal if you do this anywhere. Why does a Niall Ferguson have to set up his own university in Austin because Harvard will not tolerate his kind of views? I mean, where are you liberal? Many of you have started liberal arts universities here. Maybe, I don't know about Azim Premji, but if you do one, make sure you don't cancel. I'm glad that Azim Premji gives a platform to people who may not agree with that. That's okay. That's the way it should be. We have to meet across the aisle, discuss our differences, say, okay, here we agree, here we do not agree, but you are not my enemy. That is the key point to do that. Okay? So you can be many things, all things. The other thing is, never mind the facts, you want to be right. You think the long sweep of history is behind you. I am sorry, it is not true. Liberalism is going to die. Liberals will live. Because as long as you are a liberal, you are a liberal. You can be one. Liberalism is not going to survive. Because it's posited the wrong hypothesis. It goes against fundamental human nature by saying that man is about individual rights have to be maximized. Never mind what happens to the rest of society. It cannot work. This is it. I won't read all of it, maybe it's difficult to read, but the last point is most important. Every proposition, Hegel said, contains within it the seeds of its own destruction. So, liberalism contains within it the seeds of its own destruction and it is self-destructive. And it's only a matter of time before it self-destructs unless it reinvents itself and says, I need to talk to people who don't agree with me. The minute you adopt that attitude, liberalism will have some virtues. But don't try to be somebody who thinks that he is one side of the aisle and not the other side. You have to be on both sides. So my point is, don't try to be liberalism because it lost the true content of liberalism is to be tolerant, accepting, this thing. So if you are not there, so be you, be human, be a conflicted human, no problem. That's the way it should be. But don't be this kind of liberal. This is a definition by one columnist in Business Standard. He says, a liberal is a person designated as a liberal by other liberals, usually on a single communal sub-criterion. As a result, the most liberal person can be labeled illiberal by liberals and the most illiberal as liberal. Most Indian liberals are wannabes. They are anxious to belong and see selective liberal certified illiberalism as the entry ticket to a certain type of social acceptability. So don't be this kind of a liberal. Be a genuine liberal. Be what you are. If that's what is there in your DNA, please be so. Don't try to be a label liberal. That label, anybody can stick anything on your back. You can do it. So do that. So I've taken enough of your time. So I hope I have enraged enough of you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take.